Good morning, first grade friends. Today in writing, we are going to talk about how now, if you've written some realistic fiction stories, how you might want to go back to one of those and take some of your favorite characters out of there and write another story about them. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that will maybe help you get the idea of how that's going to happen. Henry and Mudge. We know that this isn't the only Henry and Mudge book that this author wrote. He's written probably 20 or 25 stories about Henry and Mudge. So we would call this a series, a Henry and Mudge series. So this is one of our favorites, but I'm going to show you a couple more. Gingerbread Man on the Loose. This is Gingerbread Man on the Loose at the zoo. But you've probably even read Gingerbread Man Loose in the School, the Gingerbread Man Loose in the Library. So it's a favorite character of this author. So this author uses that character in more than one story. Llama Llama. This is another one. This one is Grandma and Grandpa. Okay, but there are other Llama Llama stories out there. So that author really liked that character, so chose to do it again. And my last one that I have here, Pete the Cat. We know this isn't the only Pete the Cat story that he has written. Pete the Cat and his 4 groovy buttons. Not the only story that the author, Eric Litwin, chose to write about Pete the Cat. He loved his character so much that he decided he was going to use him in so many other stories. And we're thankful for some of those authors that do that, because sometimes those are some of our very favorite stories when we can read more than one story about characters. So the teaching point today, I want you to know, to teach you that sometimes when a character imagines a character that when writers imagine a character that they really like, sometimes they stick with that character for a bit and they create more than one story around him or her. And the fiction writers sometimes write series. So I want you to take a look at the screen that I have here, and it says book 1 of a series. So book 1 is going to have to do some important things. It's going to have to tell who the character is. Maybe there's more than one character. Henry and Mudge are always a team. Where the character lives, what the character likes. We know that Mudge likes crackers, and that's something that we hear in every one of those stories. How the character feels. Remember, we can tell a character's feelings from the way they look, from their actions, from what they do. We can tell their character's feelings from their words, lots of different things. Who the character's best friends are. Obviously, Henry and Mudge are a team right there, but many of the other stories that we listen to, we find out who the character's friends are in Nate the Great. Remember, Nate the Great has lots of good friends that help him solve problems. And important background information. Something that you would want your reader to know without having to put it in every book. So your first book might have some information to let you really get to know that character, so that the next story you write about that character, if they've already read the first one, you don't have to redo that in that next one. I have another screen for us, and it is now we are getting serious about being series writers, realistic fiction writers. These are some of the things that realistic fiction writers do. This is a chart that maybe you've seen before. We create a pretend character. We use a familiar place. We story tell it. We can act out the story or imagine in our mind what that character is going to do. We use sequence words to tell then, next, after that, and we end it. And we've talked about with writing, sometimes we want to have a happy ending. Sometimes sad endings don't make us want to read more or write more. So sometimes we want to have a happy ending and some great ideas for maybe what the next story could be about. So When writing realistic fiction, we do have to remember that we have to ask, could this really happen? That's the important thing about realistic fiction, is that everything you are writing about has to really happen. Okay. Yesterday, I talked about adding talking to your stories. Right here, you'll see there's a speech bubble. But we talked about using quotation marks. Put said to bed. That means we don't want a story where everybody just said this and said that and said this and said that. We want to make sure that we can also use words like cried out or yelled or screamed. So rather than just saying, the character said, ouch, we might say, the character yelled, ouch, and it makes our story much more exciting. We want to show feelings. We want to make sure we have movement in our story. Do our characters move? And how do the characters talk to one another? Slow it down. Use small actions. We're going all the way back to the very beginning of the school year where we wanted to have a watermelon seed story. Okay, and then we wanted to tell it step by step. Next up is explore mentor text. Henry Mudge is a great mentor text, okay? They go on lots of fun adventures. Use repetition. He smelled his. Henry and Mudge does a great job. Remember when they go on the smelly hike? Mudge smelled the trees, and Mudge smelled the on the trail, or there were some animal prints, didn't he see those things? And then rather than saying he smelled number one thing, number two thing, number three thing, we can stretch that out. And he smelled this, then he smelled the next thing, and then he smelled the last thing. We want to stretch those words out. You sound words snap and boom if there are things happening in the backgrounds of your stories. Make sure that we are knowing what's happening in the background. Get the character in trouble. Maybe the character wants something. That really isn't trouble, but remember, a trouble doesn't always have to be bad. Maybe you know what? We could use that example when your grandma gives you a lemon tree as an example for this. The character wanted all of those great things for her birthday, but grandma got her a lemon tree, okay? And that wasn't a bad problem to have, because in the end, she was able to use those lemons to make lemonade. She solved her problem in a way that helped her even more than had she gotten all of those things for her birthday. Use travel words. Later that day, the next morning. I think that's a great idea. Show big reactions, actions, and dialogue. Dialogue is that speaking. Are your characters speaking to one another? And then stretch out the problem. Okay, we've had some great stories shared with me, and one thing I said was, if you want to, you can stretch out the problem. Maybe he tries one thing to solve the problem. Your character tries a second thing to solve the problem, and it isn't until the third thing that your character tries that allows your character to get out of trouble. So today for writing, remember, if you want to take a character that you've already written about and start writing a series of books, you're going to keep some of the things the same in that series, but then you're going to change some of the actions and the problems and the solutions that happen. So friends, today, writing, I want you to see if you can do that. Have you already written a story that has a great character that you really like? If you haven't done that and you're not ready to write a series, maybe the next realistic fiction story that you write, you can really think up a great character that you would want to use in more than one story. Then think about what book one would be. Think about what book two would look like. Maybe even think about what book three would look like. Okay, so we're learning about writing series. If you're ready to write a series, go for it. If you're not quite ready to write a series, that's okay. Keep writing your realistic fiction stories. I'm so excited to be able to hear them and see them. Next week, remember, actually this week we'll be conferencing, so hopefully I'll get to see some of your stories, and maybe we can think about how I can help you during that time to be able to take your character to another series or another book in your series. Hey, friends, have a great day. It's turning out to be a beautiful day today. Hopefully yours is too.